What's up, folks? Welcome back to the stream. It's Wednesday. We have been visited by the Warhamster today. It feels like it's been a year since we've done a regular Warhamster Wednesday live stream. For those who are new here, maybe, because I think there's a lot of you since the last time we did a Warhamster Wednesday. This is a little bit more of a low-key stream. I don't have a lot of pre-scheduled things to talk about. We're not talking about metagame stuff quite as much. We're not talking about list construction quite as much. But what we are talking about is funny community interactions. So this is stuff like, in this case, it's going to be a lot of Reddit threads because we have a lot of Reddit threads to read through, but also just funny things like judge calls and event stories and weird rules questions that people have had. And yeah, so we're back. We're back, bro! Let's hop on in here. What do I think of Librarius and Emperor's Shield? For AP2, ignore cover, Stormbolters with sustained hits 1 on Terminator Squad. I fucking love Emperor's Shield, so I think it's great. I do think that there is a little bit of a downside with being unable to stack enhancements anymore, because previously you would take Champion of the Feast and Maladraxian Standard, and you'd put those two things together, and you'd have an Assault Terminator unit that slapped super fucking hard. But I do think that it's still fine. So, I don't know. I'd play it. I even wonder if I guess, like, the other 1-point detachments for Space Marines are kind of mid, besides Librarians. Librarius is, like, wild. Librarius is almost a 2 detachment point detachment, but you get it with another detachment. It's crazy. And so, I don't know. It seems pretty good. The tough part is that, like, in order to take a Librarian in a Terminator squad, you would also have to not have Lysander in that Terminator squad, and Lysander makes that Terminator squad fuck so hard. It's wild. If you have not been shot by that Terminator squad, the Lysander squad, which is like AP 1, ignore cover, full hit and wound rerolls, +1 to hit and +1 to wound, they just like drop in and they just delete like one of whatever. It's crazy. So that unit is pretty wild. You'd have to cut that out, which is, I don't know, makes me a little bit sad, but it is what it is. Anyway, chat, that's what we're doing. We're gonna hop in here and talk about some Reddit threads. We got a couple of fun ones that I thought were interesting that cropped up recently, and then we have one big one which I think is going to be fun to read through. The first couple are like kind of sort of PSAs, I guess. This was I think a very based announcement, speaking with a lot of bias, of course. A very based announcement from the admins of the Warhammer competitive subreddit, which is, I guess, I don't know if this was like a premeditated thing that they like had a moderator vote on or something, or whether the Nurgler over here just fucking got fed up with it. But immediate ban on AI slop. Any content with AI generated code or AI generated assets, I believe, is immediately gonna be deleted. Oh, Inky's here also to complain about AI generation. What's up, kitty cat? How you doing? You want to come say hi to the chat? Oh, she's off screen. Awesome. Can I move my camera? You can see her face a little bit. How you doing over there? I guess I didn't really consider. Oh, I just replaced my AC unit and I forgot to move the other one out from behind me. So that's awkward. There's just a weird AC unit sitting there. I guess I didn't really consider that her new cat tree is a little bit short for my standing desk here, which is very sad. So when I'm sitting here, she sits right next to me. But when I'm standing up, she's all the way down here, which is a little bit sad. There was a post using an AI summary of a video, and the Nurgler deleted it. So, like I said, chat, I mean, an immense amount of bias, right? That's fucking so shitty. There used to be this whole crew of people, and it pissed me off. I got so upset. Like, I would make a video, I do a data sheet deep dive or something, where I'd be like, guys, I've spent all this time, did all this math, I discussed a million different interesting interactions with a unit. We would talk about all of the combinations you could do with a unit in a particular faction, go through all its sub-factions. This was back in 8th and 9th edition when all that stuff was relevant. It's a little bit less, it's a little bit weirder now. We could maybe go back to data sheet deep dive stuff, but the series ended up not being that popular, so... I ended up stopped doing it. But people would always just slide into my DMs and be like, "Hey, man, do you have a write-up of this video so I can read it instead of watching the video?" And I was like, "You motherfucker, why do you think I made the video?" So people would watch it. What are you talking about? Do I have a write-up of the video? What am I going to do? Send you a copy of my content that is like, I don't get anything from? What the fuck is that? So, I mean, I am biased against this AI-generated stuff. You've heard me discuss quite a bit about there's this epidemic in the sort of lore community for Warhammer 40k of AI-generated YouTube channels that just pump out like AI readings of Lexicanum articles, and it's fucking constant, dude. They new of them, like 5 or 6 are launched every day, and it's all, it's everywhere. At least as far as I know, right? There might be 100 in the background that nobody ever sees. It's just super shitty. And I think that's cool and based. And honestly, it seems like the community also thinks that's cool and based. So I love it. I love it. Yeah, the AI lore stuff is absolutely fucking wild, dude. It's just like the lowest effort trash that you could possibly imagine. Absolutely wild. It was a Meta Monday video summary. From I guess it would the post is probably deleted, but I'd be interested to see what it was off of. Whose video was it? Was it summarizing? Yeah. So I think that it's, I don't know. I think that's good in general. I think it's going to be sweet. I do think there's a lot of funny commentary from the community. Poor Votan banned from this sub because, of course, if you're not a lore head like me, I know all about the lore. Ironkin are artificial people that they build from computers, but I think that the idea is that those are like general AI and not necessarily like generative AI, right? You know, it is what it is. So yeah, I think it's fine. There is a thing. So there's obviously like a big push towards in the event organization side towards AI generation for like creative assets. And I don't love that, honestly, but I do think that like if you're generating something, but it wasn't something that you were going to be hiring someone to do anyway, I'm not like quite as critical of it. So if it's like I'm running an RTT and I AI generated a poster for it, it's like that. Otherwise, I would have just put the logo of the store on or something, right? Like something like that. So I'm like, I don't know. That's like a little bit less egregious, but I would much prefer that you just make something like you take some pictures and you slap them together and you throw some fun shades on them, because I do think it looks better. There is like the DALL-E model where everything's kind of like sepia tone and a little bit washed out. Everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? When you talk about AI generated pictures, I bet if we went to Best Coast Pairings right now, this is on my fucking chest. You guys want to look at my nipples for a while while we look at Inky? We could just put it on Inky. Here you go. Hi, kitty. Inky. Yeah. You want to be on camera so bad. You're so cute.
Briong 6931 donated $5 through Super Chat. Copilot is fucked Outlook up so badly that I can't search for old emails anymore. I have to physically look for an email from 2022.
Wait, that's insane. What? Which one's Copilot? I can never keep them all straight. Is Copilot the Windows one? They keep like giving me little pings to like add it to my dashboard or whatever. And I'm like, no, I don't care. I'm just gonna You're just Google. I would just Google it. You are not more useful than a tool that already exists that has been purpose built to do what I need to do. If I go to find events, I bet if we just look for Warhammer 40k events, in the next, I don't know, couple months, we're gonna see like a million of these banners. And the problem is that like it makes fucking everything look the same. Yeah. So like, here we go. We'll go over here. So like this one, right? Everything's like sepia tone and everything's kind of like low contrast. right? The Dali. It's the Dali style. That one looks like that. A lot of these just use pictures, which is fine. This one, there you go. That's the same style. All right. Look at these fucking things, dude. What is the difference here? These end up all looking identical. So, like, I don't know. Just, there we go. We found another one. So, it's like, you could just put this into a poster, I guess. And I think it would look better if you spent some time into it. It's so interesting because it does, like, it has the like veneer of being professional, but it does make you look kind of low effort. If all you do is just stick this into an AI and be like, make a poster for my thing, here's the information, and then it does it rather than doing it yourself. I don't know, but like, I love Ironweld's art style. By the way, I confirmed yesterday I'm live streaming Ironweld this weekend. I'm not on the event page yet, but I'm actually going to copy paste this over, so put it into my calendar. Let's just make sure I keep that tab open. Like, this is like, they have somebody do little custom little goobers for all of their events, and they're adorable and they look great and they're eye-catching. And I think if you want to advertise your event in a more professional manner, having someone do this with intentionality is so much more effective than plugging it into a fucking AI generated thing, right? Like, oops, I don't want to flag that. Like, pretty sure this is also AI generated. It's like the same sort of color scheme, right? They all look fucking identical. So I don't know. I do think that for like these little events that are run by like individual people, it's not quite as like egregious as having like either someone just fucking flipped my camera again. What's up, Inky? How are you doing? Then having some people who are, like just straight up copying over someone else's work, but I do think that we should move away from it as a community, and I think it would only be helpful. I do wonder too, is like a ban on AI generated content on like one of the biggest community spaces for the game. Does that move the needle for a lot of the stuff? You know, does it become a case where you start to delete these posts that relate to like events that were heavily used generative AI for advertising and things? I don't know. It's a great question. I do think it looks bad, and I think that you would be behooved to do something different for sure. One moment, chat. I have to replace my thing. Real quick. Amateur Strongman. The Hell World use of AI art is small local event t-shirts. I do appreciate event t-shirts because like I wear them at events right now. So like when I go to an event, I'll wear an event t-shirt from a previous event. I think that's kind of fun. I ordered, and that reminds me, I actually have to get back to these people. I was very excited. I custom made online. I designed these jerseys to wear at events. So I'm doing coverage. They say event coverage on them. They're like very professional. They say TacticalTortoise.com, all the stuff, and then they sent me the wrong size. So I was really psyched to be like, yes, I'm going to be a professional live streamer finally. After like 2 years of traveling for events, basically semi full time, I'll finally be a professional streamer and have a shirt. And immediately I get the fucking rug pulled out from under me. But like I'll get a shirt from an event, and then I'll like have a lineup of shirts that I wear at an event that have like the logos of other events. And I think that's cool. But outside of that specific use case, like, do people wear those? I don't know. Do people like shirts? Great question of time. I don't know. Anyway, chance. Yeah, AI, not ideal. Generative AI, especially creative generative AI. What the fuck, dude? Why are we doing that? Why even bother? I do think that there's like, I don't want to say like necessarily. I don't think I'm as anti-AI as some people. But I am in creative spaces because I think there's basically no, just like it looks bad. Like I don't, it looks bad and it's immoral. You probably shouldn't do it. But I do think like as a tool, as an organizational tool, as something to help you like that, just like, fucking write prose for an email or some bullshit. Like I do think, or to like use as a search engine to like Google things for like, what's the word? Results for or solutions to a problem or something like that. I do think that's helpful, rather than spending egads of time trolling through individual listings online. Having an AI do it, say, does legitimately save you time. But in this case, not ideal, dude. Anyway, pretty cool thing, honestly, from the Warhammer community subreddit. I think that's pretty fun. Everyone wants AI for cancer treatment detection. I mean, yeah, that would be great. That would be sweet. But the problem is that the offshoots of that technology, where you're using it to make fucking posters for your Warhammer 40,000 event, it's unnecessary. We don't need that. We could just leave it at home. It's okay. Question is how AI makes $1 billion with the promise of maybe totally perhaps making profit. You have to sacrifice my firstborn to the YouTube algorithm. Well, I mean, I'm not a whole industry, right? Like, I don't pretend to be. I am but one man, and I'm not going to complain about the amount of money I make on this job. Like, it is I put a lot of hours into it on a day-to-day basis, but and I'm not going to say that I'm like particularly well off, but I'm comfy. I'm comfy and I get to fucking play Warhammer. Like, what the fuck? That's amazing. So, I don't know. I do tend to like tread towards, I guess, the more, I guess I have more of a cynical acceptance of capitalism, I guess, than a lot of people, but I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, it's pretty cool. So let's talk about some other stuff. AI is depressing. We don't have to talk about it. Let's talk about another interesting one I think is very, very funny to put into a Reddit thread, a chat. Last week was asked the question, are you polite in person? Thank you, Hungry Course 6584. This feels like someone, they're like, oh, I'm relatively new to the Warhammer 40k competitive community, but not Warhammer 40k in general. I'm going to level Hungry Course 6584. I think you also might be new to Reddit. Because the gist of this thread is, why are people not as polite here as they are in person? My brother in Christ, have you been to Reddit before? Reddit is an algorithmically derived formula to generate toxic engagement. The fact that people can just post a thing and you with no context whatsoever, just tell them they suck by clicking this button and make them feel bad, immediately engenders conflicts between people. It has been scientifically designed to make people fight online. So, like, I don't know. I just think this is very funny. This feels very naive. To be honest, yeah. Welcome to the internet. Reddit is the front page. Guess what? All of the things that you have to say about internet discourse are doubly true of Reddit. And in fairness, I'm not going to say that that's a good thing. I don't think that toxic discussion like that helps anyone. I think it's shitty and clicky, and I've seen a lot of games and communities destroyed by that. But being like, how come the community here is not very polite to each other? And then you just look at every community on this website and it's all on fire. It just tickles me a little bit, I think it's very funny. Discord chats are barely civil. Anyway, they say they're relatively new to competitive Warhammer 40k, and your experience of in-person events so far has been really positive, which is a great thing about the community. It turns out that when you get a bunch of people mildly buzzed and play toy soldiers with each other, not no one, but very few people are mean. Everyone's just there to like vibe and just sort of hang out. The vast majority of opponents are lovely, friendly people, show good sportsmanship, and even when there's just disagreement over a ruling or a rule, which happens at least once every game, they are able to temper emotions and resolve things cordially because we're adult humans. Coming to this sub is a different story. Maybe it's that it stands out more because it's unusual, but they're also, no, what? It's not unusual. That's Reddit. But there also seems to be a lot of toxic communication. The person asks a question, they are bluntly told, just read the rules, or just directly mocked. Someone else offers a rules interpretation. It's a new edition. There's going to be a lot of opinions, and they're dismissed. Told they are stupid. Told they are incapable of playing the game. That the rules are clear. They need to get over it or open their eyes. This could be dealt with by community response, downvoting, reporting the rude person, but that doesn't appear to happen. Instead, the same naive souls who offered their apparently offensively foolish solution then downvoted to oblivion for offering their take. My brother in Christ, that is why Reddit is a toxic cesspool. It's interesting to be like experiencing someone's first exposure to how shitty this website is. That is why Reddit engenders so much conflict between people, is because as soon as someone disagrees you for literally any reason, and it could be that you had a typo in your post, or it could be that you phrased something in a way they didn't like, or it could be that they, I don't know, want to brigade you for some reason, they'll hit the downvote button, and then other people can also hit the downvote button, and even though you didn't do anything wrong, you just get pooped on by the community, and that's why this website sucks. So, I don't know, chat. I think it's very funny. I don't think that this is exclusive to Warhammer 40k. I don't think this is necessarily exclusive to this subreddit. I don't think that this is exclusive to even Reddit in general, but I do think that Reddit very explicitly kind of encourages it. Maybe not explicitly encourage it, but implicitly encourages it with the design of its user interface. So I don't know, chat. I think it's very funny. Check out the Sims subreddit. There's nothing I want more to do right now than check out the Sims subreddit. Is it that bad? Is it r/the Sims? Can we rate by like recent most downvoted? No, there's no way to do that. All right. Can we find some really, really bad posts that nobody likes? All right. Apparently, The Sims 4 received an update. It requires an update so before you play it, which I imagine breaks mods, right? When that happens, right? It's like the same thing that happens with like Skyrim. Anytime they update Skyrim and everyone loses their fucking minds because every mod is broken. Just go offline 100%. So there's also people being like, I guess everyone just says just go offline. Why do people always complain when there's an update? Because it's constant. All right, this was not as spicy as I thought it would be. Life Sims? Is it this one? r/life simulators? Place to discuss life simulators by fans for fans. The Sims franchise in Zoe Paralives Dreamlight Valley. Where are all these like stars in the name thing? I love cozy life simulators. This seems dead. Well, this person has zero upvotes. Uh-oh. Wait. Is this person like... Oh, somebody complained about a different life simulator because their screenshots look better in this life simulator. I see. Consumer feedback. Yes, of course. Me when I want to create more unnecessary discourse on the subreddit. You know what? Because a different game has a slightly better screenshot filter, fuck those other guys. And so I passed the most toxic life sim fandom I've come across. I have been awakened to a new theater of life sim fandom war. I did not know this existed. It is funny. Isn't it funny? It tickles me to no end. And like, as someone, what is happening? These screenshots. What the fuck? Is it like, as someone who is kind of a victim of this myself, as like I'll find myself inside a group think in some cases. I'm definitely not immune to the effect. But isn't it funny how humans will tribalize over fucking everything? It's just like so weird, like it's so built into our DNA how it's like anything I disagree with you with immediately like makes me feel like we should fight. We should do a battle. And it's just like this evolutionary throwback to times where we were banging two rocks together to make a fire or whatever, where we just had to band together with people who are just marginally similar to us in order to survive, and anyone else was a thief of resources. They were stealing our mammoth meats, and nowadays it just devolves into, at the best case, stupid fights on Reddit, and at the worst case, stupid wars about stuff. I hate how I can't dress like an older lady and make myself an older man. I hate that too, chat. I just happen to have the fashion sense of an old lady, and I hate when I'm playing this game. What game? And I'm trying to make an old lady character or a young adult who dresses like an old lady. This is such a classic problem, chat. Who has not had this experience? I want to make a character who is a young adult, but who also dresses like an old lady. And for some reason, my character looks like she's a teenager. But you made a young adult, which is a 20-year-old. I guess like the problem is that the dress options in the life simulator are too fashionable. Is that the complaint? Is that where we've come? They're too sexy. I hate it. All right, that's very funny. I appreciate that. Sometimes I don't always feel like being lesbian in game. Bro, same. Incredible. Anyway, chat, why are people on Reddit not polite enough? That was very good. That was a very good tangent. I really appreciate that. Let's talk about Warhammer 40k for a bit. We'll talk about there's yet another thread. We've basically had entire live streams about specifically this one topic, which is WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. And it's come up again. I don't know if it's any like particularly spicy thread or anything, but I just thought it was funny that it comes up like on a weekly basis, essentially. And if anybody is sort of hopping into the hobby, of course, it's going to be something that's important to know. I've been working on my Grey Knights army since the start of 10th edition. I'm going to try to enter a tournament soon. Congratulations to Debitus. You're going to be in Debitibus if you keep buying Grey Knights, because they're expensive. Not that's actually Grey Knights are that expensive right now. I think they're pretty cheap. But in any case, welcome in, Debitus. I hope your first tournament is awesome. A question for more experienced tournament players. How strict is what you see is what you get? If I run a unit with 4 heavy weapons and declare them as flamers, does the model have to accurately depict flamers? I understand tournaments have different rules, but let's say in official tournaments. And I think generally speaking, the answer is if you have a question, check with your TO. But in most cases, I think people are pretty understanding, especially about infantry war gear, of course. This unit, I only have one copy of, has a bonus heavy weapons, and this tank, I only have one, has the other cannon. 99% of opponents will have no issue. I have 3 copies of this unit. They all look the same, but 2 of them have different heavy weapons. I also have 2 of the tank that look the same, but one has the correct cannon, the other one has the alternative. Don't do it. Yeah, so I think part of the issue is that, like, if I have a bunch of paladins, for example, and they all have a bunch of different weapon options, but I want to run psi cannons or incinerators, and both units have silencers, and you say this one is psi cannons, this one is incinerators, that's where it gets problematic. But, I mean, generally speaking, not a lot of people will recognize the difference between the silencer and the psi cannon. Psi cannon has a longer barrel. Silencer has 3 little barrels. Just so you know. Just so we're on the same page. Anyway, so you could be like, my silencer unit is psi cannons, whatever. And then the other unit is, we should probably demarcate in some way that they are incinerators. I am a big fan of, in general, let's see if I have a bag of them over here in my little storage section. I don't have a bag, but I do have a couple of loose ones. I love rubber bandies, chant. These little guys. For a hot minute, who remembers back in the day when these were banned from LVO? You weren't allowed to play these. These are awesome for a bunch of different reasons. They're, I think they're just for, like, you can do like rubber band artwork with them, where you basically weave them together. Or, I don't know, they're also just rubber bands. They're just useful. But you can get them in a million different colors. And the cool thing about that is that you can use them to differentiate units by wrapping them around the model without having to paint the models different colors. But the other thing you can do is you can use different colored bands to differentiate individuals inside the unit. And so one thing I've done, like, in the past has been, like, the fucking flag broke on my Plague Bearer squad or whatever. So I'm gonna put a band around the flag guy and tell my opponent to start, because the position of the flag guy is important for not only for line of sight, but also for like who's providing the flag bonus, the +1 leadership checks. If I have to pull him to coherency or to, as a casualty or something, it's important that we're both aware of which one has it. So I'm going to describe to my opponent, hey, my guys with special war gear are going to be the guys with the little rubber band on them. And that's usually what I'll do. It's also good for, like, the one that playing demons. This came up a lot, but, like, there's random stuff in demons, like flesh hounds. Like, they have random stuff inside a unit that's, like, very marginally different. Like flesh hounds, the unit champion of the flesh hound unit has a flamer, but nobody else has a flamer. So sometimes you just showcase your opponent. I'll just be like, I'm going to put a rubber band on this guy. He's got a flamer because he's the unit champion. Every once in a while it comes up, right? But it is important to know, if I have to pull that guy to coherency or pull that guy to casualty, it is important to know that that's the case. But being like, here's all my heavy weapons, but I've demarcated these guys in blue because they have blasters, I don't know, or something, that I think helps a lot without necessarily having to have specific war gear everywhere. Now, I do think there probably needs to be I think more of a convention towards, now that a lot more things have frame, towards like correctly modeled frame measurers, because we'll talk about frame in every single live stream apparently, but frame, the war gear on a frame measuring model can dramatically change its position, its conformation on the table. So if you have a burst cannon and a Riptide, or again, Riptide's a bad example, he's a base measure, I think. Who knows these days? But like a Vanquisher cannon on a Lieben Ross versus like the Demolisher cannon is a massive difference. And so having those models correctly modeled, I think, is very important. Or the Las cannon on a Lieben Ross versus like a smaller weapon on the front is important, because it can change literally where your model ends up being on the table. So I have seen in the past a lot of I don't know, chicanery when it comes to hull measuring models that have different war gear selected, but I do think we should make an effort to make those, modeled correctly. Until such time as Games Workshop gets with the 21st century, the year of our Lord 2026, and gets rid of fucking hull measuring from the game, hull measuring is still very important. So you should probably try to make it happen. Go Toxicrins. Toxicrins are so interesting. There's this funny thing. I was reading a thread earlier about it while I was prepping for this live stream, actually. And somebody made a mention. They were like, guys, I've fixed the talk screen. And I've seen this comment 100 times in the last 2 weeks, where they're like, guys, all we have to do for the talk screen to be the most effective unit in Tyranids is to give it frame keyword. And I'm like, is that what we have to do? Is that it? Because the thing you have to keep in mind with frame, and especially if we pull up the like movement rules, right? It is in the moving units section, and it's in moving around terrain features. So if we go over here to our friendly little emulator, and we take a peek at the diagram that's in the rulebook, right? The Rhino is a frame measuring model. It's very clear based on how it moves, and also according to the text of the rule, but it's like showcased in this diagram. The frame model, when it's rotating, it still moves. It doesn't like pick itself up and teleport to a new orientation. It physically rotates on the tabletop, which means when you're frame, you now have to worry about all nearby dense terrain features every time you spin around, which is not the case if you're a base measurer, because while moving, base measurers shrink down to the size of their base. So the thing, people will be like, oh, frame's amazing for Toxicrin because you're going to be able to gain so much movement by spinning yourself and flipping your tentacles to the other direction. But my brother in Christ, you need like a 12-inch diameter section of the table clear of all things in order to be able to make that maneuver. I think it actually just makes them harder to move around. I don't know, man. I don't know if the Toxicrid is salvageable these days. So it is what it is. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. Maybe it should be measured from the hull and not the weapon. Yeah, the problem that you come up with, though, is that you can say, oh, measure from the hull. And you're like, all right, what is that? What is that? And so for most cases, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? If we're talking about a land raider, and you say only the hull counts for measurement, you consider the hull to be its base. And we're like looking at this guy, we're like, all right, fair enough. Here's our land raider. I don't know why it's so zoomed in, but here it is. It's pretty clear. We can tell what is the hull. The hull of a vehicle like a Land Raider is this boxy bit, right? The extra parts, those are weapon sponsons. Those aren't part of the hull. But what if we come to this model? I don't know why these pictures are so small. What is the hull here? Is it this? Is it the part that the guys sit in? Is it the engines? Are this part of the hull, or is that a wing? Or is that also a hull fixture? I don't know. And so the issue is that in an effort to not have to define that for every single unit, Games Workshop has just said hull means every part of your model. Right. And, I mean, I think that's fine, but the issue, like the problem becomes that when you do have pieces of those models that are like oriented in different ways, it does actually change how they measure, which is problematic. What they would need to do, and this is not outside the realm of possibility, like this is not a crazy thing to suggest. What they should do, and what they won't do, but what they should do is on the datasheet, they should have a little diagram, a top-down diagram of the model that just highlights where the frame or the hull is. And that's what you should use for measurement. If you don't base measure, if you have frame keyword, they just have a little diagram. It's in the corner. It just goes frame, reference, and it shows the picture, and there's a highlighted part, and that's where you measure from. And you always use projection measurement to solve all the problems.
6,931 donated $2 through Super Chat. What if I chose the bloat drone head with flames?
There's a bloat drone head with flames? The bloat drones had a weird interaction. Fortunately, we don't have to worry about these anymore. But they had a weird interaction in 10th edition, because 10th edition caused you to hull measure before they just like dictated which model, like every single model in the game they hull measured. You hull measured if you were a vehicle that did not have a flight stand. Or you were either, I think it was like either an aircraft or like a flying vehicle that did not have a flight stand. And bloat drones were this weird exception because they don't technically have a flight stand. They're just propped up on their base. So technically, if you were to read the rules as explicitly as possible, they would hull measure, which did matter because the little like pointy bits off the side do extend about a half an inch or so off the edges of the base. So sometimes they could go sideways and they could engage you with the little pokey bit, which was always very stupid. And I was like, I mean, that's fair. That is what the rules say, but I don't know why we're, why we're being so pedantic. I don't know what the flame head is though, chat. You can put like smoke launchers on them. It looks like they have little, do they have little like grabby things you can put on? That's kind of cute. A little grabber. It's a fun little silly guy. Support the diagram idea? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if only Games Workshop, listen to any of our suggestions. This game would be better. With the Lehman Russ example, are you allowed to turn the turret backwards to make the long barrel on the back rather than the front since the weapon orientation no longer matters for firing arcs? Yes, of course. The one thing you can't do, this has been the case since 10th edition, is that if you have a movable part of your model, you cannot, I believe this is the case, you cannot change the position of that part during gameplay. So you can't be like, I'm going to be backwards, and then, oh, my turret spins, now I can see you. Can't do that. If your turret's backwards, it's backwards the whole game. So you have to pick a position where it's sitting. There was like a really silly interaction I saw at one point, because this is like, we're in the weeds now. This is like so emblematic of like all those things that are broken and stupid with Warhammer's line of sight rules. But there was a tournament I live streamed, and there's a ruling Games Workshop had, which is 100% a typo, that said, if you are, I think it was that like, if the entirety of your model must remain on the battlefield unless you are a model with a base. If you're a model with a base, portions of your model can extend over the battlefield, which is to allow if you're like Deep Strike, Hive Tyrant or a Demon or something that has a big wing, and you're like, oh, in order to position it correctly here around your models and around terrain, my wing is extending like this and has to like protrude off the battlefield edge. That's fine, right? And you suffered some downsides if you did that, but it wasn't that big of a deal. However, what they never said was that if you were a hull measurement vehicle that also had a base, you were still subject to the rule that you had to be wholly on the battlefield. So this is fucking stupid. I streamed this event at one point, and a Tau player who's playing railguns on his hammerheads looked at the terrain, and he said, oh, interesting. If I place my hammerhead such that its base is on the table, but its hull is off the table, but I flip its gun around, which doubles the length of the vehicle. Like if we look at a hammerhead, you can imagine. Grab the thing. These are so small. I'm gonna find a real picture so I don't have to zoom in a million times. So like you can imagine this hammerhead, right? We flip the turret around, so suddenly this piece is all the way back here, and it literally doubles the length. If I put the railgun backwards at an angle, because according to the letter of the law, I'm allowed to extend over the edge of the tabletop, I can basically, essentially kitty corner it up to a ruin in the edge of the table, and such that my engine, what are those called? Nacelles extend over the edge of the table, but that allows me to orient the cannon so that it protrudes past a terrain feature and I can shoot you. And I was like, come on, man. I was like, bro, is this where we are as a game? Like, the combination of, like, bad, like, a hull measurement, base measurement, and true line of sight rules has all culminated to create this perfect storm where a hammerhead, like, jukes to the side, faces backwards, flips its gun around, flips the gun around a corner that's off the table and shoots you. I'm like, bro. Can't we do something about this, dude? This is fucking stupid. Yeah. And it's not even like necessarily rules lawyering. Like, at the time, those were the explicit rules. It was just like clearly a fucking typo. But they never changed it through the whole edition. That was legal the entire time in 10th edition. But the fact that it only comes up like once every 10 games or whatever, when it comes up in those games, it's really annoying and stupid. But then you complain about it and move on, means that they're not really incentivized to change them. And like, this is stuff that I think we as enfranchised people in the community have like or at least I guess speaking personally, I get to see all this bullshit firsthand. That's like, it's like kind of up in your face, but as a designer sitting in the back, you're like, this makes sense. You can't put you can't put your base off the table. The rest of yours on the table, and you draw a line of sight for any part of the model. That's fine. Print it, ship it, we'll go. And you don't really consider the implications of all those things you're saying, where it's like, no, you have to put a clause, you have to put a cutout for hull measurement. This is hull measurement models still can't go off the table, even if they do have a base. Come on, guys. That's rules development 101. But Games Workshop doesn't believe in rules development, only design. So, it is what it is, chat. Yeah. Yeah, it's not the player's fault. I don't disagree with you at all. I do think, like, yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. Like, you don't want to blame like adjudication for anything, and the judges are just playing with the rules that they're given. But I don't think it's like unreasonable to extrapolate that, because hull measurement models count their hull as base for all other purposes, that it's not unreasonable to also roll it. They can't go over the edge of the table. Like, there's precedent there. And I think that's clearly the intention of the rule, because it works like that for all other hull measurement models, except the ones that hover slightly off the ground. Like, but they're just playing with the rules that they're given. So it is what it is. I think that's a very good example of a particular moment where 40K's, like the 40K's line of sight rules have come back to bite the game in the ass. And also, yeah. I think I had something more poignant to say, but I think that's a very good example of that. Yep. Did they ever make a decision on true line of sight for gaps in tread modeling, like tread molding? No. True line of sight has not changed in 11th edition. If all the bullshit you could do in 10th edition with true line of sight, where you can, I can see under the Unity Rhino and all that stuff, that still exists. That will exist as long as true line of sight exists. Unless they want to make a fucking terrible, like, as much as I dislike true line of sight, the measure from a point of your model to the point of the other model, I even more so dislike the true line of sight rules that have a nebulous definition of true line of sight. At the very least, we exist in a situation where we are playing the second worst instance of true line of sight. But the worst would be trace line of sight from the eyeballs of your model or something like that. And suddenly now you have to pay attention about like which parts of your model you're drawing line of sight from. That does like solve some of those problems with measuring under tanks and things, but it creates an entirely new set of issues. So like, I don't know. It's still a thing where you can see in most cases through intervening vehicles. It just is, it is what it is. Had LGS used bases for line of sight, since being able to shoot someone with their pistol sticking out, a piece of cape sticking out is stupid? That's fair. I mean, if everyone's playing by the same rules, there's no reason that you should be that you should be, you shouldn't be able to do that. I think that's totally reasonable. The problem is that like the tough part becomes when you're like, hey, this is how our LGS plays, and then someone else shows up to a tournament or to like an organized play event, and they're playing rules as written, and there's just like a conflict there. I remember back in 8th edition, I played a tournament where my opponent and I were going to have like, it was going to be an interesting game. It was going to be a kind of a tough game in the finals. I think for either of us, and then it was 8th edition and one of us went first. Somebody was going to blast the fucking shit out of the other person. And I, at one point, like drew line of sight from like a fucking stupid part of a miniature to another part of a miniature. I was like, oh, I can see over this terrain feature because my guy's really tall and your guy's really short. And he was like surprised by that. He was like, oh, you can see with like the flags and shit on the top of your model. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's just point to point. And he didn't realize that. And I felt bad and like after the fact, I was like, I don't know what to do in this situation. Like I moved up to attack you or whatever when you thought you were safe. And like there wasn't a position for that unit to be. 8th edition trade was terrible. There was no obscuring or anything. You just had things on the table, and if they blocked line of sight, they blocked line of sight. And so in the position where I was standing, there wasn't a position where he could stand where I wasn't going to see him. So it's like, I'm going to shoot you regardless, but he didn't know that interaction existed. And I think that's because like, when I play in my local community, we play, you can only draw line of sight from the hull or like up to 3 inches or only the base or whatever. Which I think is fair and almost certainly improves the game. But then you run into those awkward situations when communities cross-pollinate, which is why generally I'm against house ruling. But if you're playing in kind of an insular community and you don't really get new people in there, it is what it is. One of your friend's first tournament experience involved first ever opponent calling him out for the armored orc boy overhanging the table in deployment. Yeah, I mean, that rule's so fucking shitty, dude. It feels so bad, too. Because you're like, I'm sorry, man. Technically, like, because your guy has he's one arm this way and one arm this way, he actually can't deploy on the line. He has to deploy, like, a half inch off the line. Which in 11th edition is a full inch to a charge. Which is, like, relevant distance, right? But it's like, fucking, why do they make you, why do they make you call that out? It's fucking dumb, dude. So the problem with that is that there's a rule, and it was in 10th edition, and it's explicit in 11th edition, that says no part of a miniature, base or hull, can extend over the line of the deployment zone. And in like the universe of free measure or free rotation, where you can just rotate your shit out of your deployment zone turn 1 anyway, that makes no difference except to like fuck over models with weird like conformations. And make it so that they have to like deploy in strange ways to like rotate themselves so they can fit in the deployment line. That sucks. That's just like a straight up a bad rule, which is stupid. To position your model so you always have a clear base edge, yeah. And then like, is that modeling for advantage? I don't know. It's crazy. It's a whole thing. Anyway, chat. Line of sight definitely isn't a constant problem. Yeah, I'm so glad that the community as a whole, like, I've been railing about true line of sight for 6 years at this point, and I'm so glad that the community as like and back in fucking 2020 or whatever, I would literally get like hate comments on I would complain about true line of sight. I would be like, this rule's broken, guys. Here's a million reasons why this rule is broken. And people would be like, nah, fuck you. I'm so glad the community has come around to understanding exactly how fucking dumb true line of sight is as a mechanic. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I through stubborn and dogged determination, I will bring people around to my way of thinking about things. So it is what it is. Is there any rules events overlapping hover tanks or crawling under a wave serpent? There are not, to my knowledge. I don't believe there are any. I have heard people reference them, but I have never found any. So, you can't move through models, but you can move underneath models. And that's what's up. And you can't move on top of models. That's the other thing. So some people say, well, if my hover tank is over you, it's on top of you. But no, on top explicitly implies contact with the second object, the object that you are on top of. So no, you can be underneath things.
At Bucket of Steel Sybil donated $6.99 through Super Chat. Can you still hide Skitarii behind Scorpius because it's a solid brick with no cracks or holes to see through it?
You can. You can indeed. Scorpius is one of the... I mean, you can from most angles. The thing to consider is that, like, the Scorpius Dune Rider at the bottom is a round object, so the corners don't really block line of sight. But, so, like, looking at, like, the projection of it, it is not a solid line of sight blocking brick. It's actually... The actual bits of it that will block line of sight to shorter models are much smaller than you would expect, because it's angled and it has rounded bumpers on the bottom. But in the center mass, it will in some cases block line of sight to infantry behind it. Land Raiders also do that. Land Raiders have an interlocked like tread system, I believe, where their treads lock with teeth that are underneath the model, and I don't believe that there's any line of sight through the model sideways. I believe Bane Blades are constructed the same way, but explicitly Rhinos are not. Sick. That's fun knowledge that hopefully in 3 years won't be relevant anymore. Yeah. Anyway, Chance. So, anyway, let's talk about some other stuff. Let's talk about the main thrust of the thing. We've tactical tangents about line of sight once again. You've got me talking about line of sight for the millionth time. Let's talk about some sus opponents in Warhammer 40,000. This is a very good one. If I were to place against somebody who flips their guns around so that they can see around a corner and stuff, I would say that's a little sus, but you're probably correct. Yeah, here we go. This is my favorite. This is my favorite thread of the weekend, and it was a banger. So, curious what other players. Thank you to Hurry 3K or Havuri 3K. Curious to know what other players have experienced themselves or against opponents in tournaments or casually. No one likes losing, and rules can be misinterpreted, and communication can get mixed up. The worst one I've experienced so far was at a team's tournament against a guard player. I had destroyed 2 out of 3 of their Rogodor and Commander tanks and was on the verge of tabling my opponent. In a last-ditch effort, they attempted to use the antenna of their last Rogodor and Commander. I love that. I forgot that this is the intro to this thread. I love that it's also a true line of sight story. Fucking incredible, dude. It's like poetry, it rhymes. I checked the visibility at eye level, and I stated, I do not believe he can see over the wall. He agreed, then replaced his Rogodor commander with one of the destroyed Rogodors, which had a taller antenna. I was baffled as I knew this was not legal, but I let it go as this interaction wouldn't have made any difference to the result. What the fuck? He's like, no, you're right. I can't see you. But what if I was a different model? Brother, that isn't the model. That model is that one. You can't say it's a different one because you wanted to use that one instead. Absolutely fucking wild, dude. Also, chats, look at it. Look at these comments. First 2 comments. The antenna shouldn't count for line of sight. So right. You're so right, bro. It's almost like we should have some sort of rule about line of sights that isn't just a nebulous thing. At a GT, I love this. This one's incredible. At a GT, I moved my Sanguinor model, a unit that has no shooting, only melee, about 3 inches away from my opponent's back home objective holders, a small unit of infantry. It was on the other side of the table from me in a single 32mm base at the time. Sanguinor used to be a small baby. It was so difficult for me to see. Probably, like, if it's on their home objective, there's, like, ruins and shit in the way, too. At the end of the charge phase, I'd missed it and forgotten to charge. I went to fight, and then realized after activating 2 other units, I asked to reroll for the Sanguinor charge. My opponent said, no, you've seen the dice rolls for other interactions, so it's too late. As if other interactions have given you more information to inform your decision of whether to charge the unit 3 inches in front of you. What? Usually when you're like, oh, no, other things have like quite a bit has changed at this point. So like that's gonna make a lot of, that's gonna like adjust a lot of your move, like a lot of your plays now that you know which, how much damage other things do. If the Sangor is next to a unit and there's no other units around, what else am I gonna do with that guy besides charge you? In fairness, though, he did miss. He missed the step. It's not his opponent's fault that he missed the charge. Technically, his opponent's in the right here, except for the next interaction is fucking amazing. I went on to fight, realized I activated 2 other units. I asked it for the Sanguinary charge. Opponent said no. You've seen dice results from other interactions, so it's too late. None of my other units anywhere close had any effects on that specific interaction. There's nothing else I could do with the Sanguinary because he's melee only. So we both knew it would die on his turn. On his next turn, he shot it with his infantry, and he didn't kill it. And then he forgot it had fights first. He asked me permission to go back and use the grenade strat on him to ensure it would die. He thought I was a real jerk for not letting him, was very upset. I explained to him that he had already set the precedent the turn before. And what's more is that he is not only asking for a more impactful takeback than what his opponent has to do, but he also was asking for a sequence break because grenade must be used before you resolve your attacks. So if his opponent is upset that this player has information about his other unit's fight phase before he gets to charge with the Sanguinor, you shouldn't know how much damage your unit does with shooting before you choose to use the grenade strat, because grenade is explicitly before you're selected to shoot. That's one of the balancing factors of grenades. Otherwise, grenade would be a pressure valve for poor dice rolls, right? Because you could resolve your attacks, leave a guy on 1, and say, I'm going to grenade and kill them. They explicitly didn't want that to be how grenade worked, so they sequenced it before you go to shoot. So these trying to use a stratagem in a way that is A, much more powerful than stratagem, B, not how the stratagem is meant to be used, is designed to be used, and then C, also explicitly what he accused his opponent of doing in the last interaction. Fucking gold. Absolutely gold story. Yeah, fucking wild, dude. I don't even think I would give the grenade take back, even if there weren't these other situations involved, because you're like, well, you fired fucking all your units. Like, what are you gonna do? Grenade is meant to work this way because you aren't supposed to know if you kill me or not before you choose to spend the command point. And his opponent's like, no, you have too much information. Fucking wild. Oh man, would you mind if I unsplit my fire to ensure the unit dies? Fucking incredible. Oh my god. There are definitely some other funny ones in here. Curious if I was the jerk in this instance. Moved Tank Busters plus a Big Mac with a shock attack gun into grenade range of a Doomsday Arc, standing with normal move only, despite having the WOG active and Assault from Mordaka. Oh, was this pre-nerf Mordaka? Yikes. So that I could grenade. Then moved the rest of my stuff, shot a bunch of things, forgot to grenade before shooting the Tank Busters. The Doomsday Arc was left on 3, at which point I realized I hadn't grenaded. It was a casual basic game. My buddy reluctantly agreed to let me grenade, citing my statement earlier as enough intent. Luckily, I only rolled 1 mortal and then failed the charge. I think if it's a casual game, it's probably fine. What I would say if I was his opponent is I would say, hey, you can grenade, but you must reroll your attack. Because, like, realistically, you can just shoot with your whole army, leave the shock attack gun unit unshot, and then be like, I'll use a grenade, right? But if we rewind the shock attack gun's activation and then just start it again from scratch, you technically don't have any information you wouldn't have had before you grenaded. In most cases, I think that's pretty reasonable. If you offer, right, if you're like, oh, I was meant to grenade here, like the math wasn't likely I shot you. I think a lot of cases people would allow that. No, a lot of people wouldn't, and I don't think that's I wouldn't fault them for that, but that's what I would offer if I were asking for that take back. I would eat that one, I think, personally, because I'd be like, that's fucking dumb. I played a game last night where my opponent, I had a heroic intervention, which was really good. My opponent was like, oh, if I can pull a guy before your intervention guy fights, and he wouldn't be able to consolidate into me. Do you want to take that back? And I was like, nah, dude, I fucking did it. If I had rolled like a boxcar's charge or whatever and had been able to like put myself in a different position, I would have a much different opinion of that interaction. So I was like, nah, it's totally cool. Incredible. Shrimp Magic. Talking shit about my people to your chat. Uh-oh. Played against a YouTube personality at a Warhammer Open. He pouted the whole time about being in the loser's bracket. Uh-oh. And spent more time talking to people walking by than playing our game. Wasn't exactly salty, but it was the least fun games of the 8. And then everyone accuses it being accuses Paul as bad at stuff. As being the subject of that. Fortunately, Chance, I am exempt from this, having never played at a Warhammer Open. So we're good. I too had that happen at a Warhammer World back in 9th edition, one of the big Bat Rep channels. It was super jarring because he was great outside of the times I spoke to him just in passing. I guess a lot of them put on a YouTube persona. For example, this year I had played a lot of Bolt Action and K47 events. Morty and Glory was there, and he's actually way more chill in person. That is a backhanded swing at Morty and Glory. R.I.P. Morty and Glory over here. The way he comes across in events in his content is as a douche, but actually he's really very nice. Def Rekka over here is throwing some shade. Had a similar experience. Guys are clearly more interested in filming content than playing the game. I mean, to some extent, that's like either there, right? I mean, I'm biased. I shouldn't win, I guess. I always forget to film though when I'm at events. That's always like a problem with me. One of the reasons that I do. Like, I do a lot of, when I do event recaps, when I play in a tournament, I do a lot of like tabletop simulator demos of what happened is because I always forget to fucking take content, which is funny. A lot of people asked who that was and nobody said it. Interesting. I wonder would be complain about being in a loser's bracket, especially if you're like X and 1. If you're X and 1 in an 8-rounder, it's like not that big of a deal, right? Like, if I'm like, oh man, I'm 3-1 after like in day 2, I'm like, man, I went 3 wins in the first day or whatever. That's sick. So it just is what it is. Like you have to. It is crazy to go to a big event and not expect random bullshit to happen and to put you in a loser's bracket. So like, I don't know. It is what it is. This is an interesting one. Push 888. I think there's like a weird, I don't know. There's an interesting sort of dynamic here. Probably my worst game was against a student of mine. I teach university. So that I think implies that he's playing against people who are like 19 plus years old, right? So actual adults. Young adults probably, but actual adults. However, you're their teacher. So it's like, I don't know. It's kind of weird to like throw your students under the bus in that way. And also like, I would say with a much greater level of reliability that like young people, you know, early 20s people can be some of the tryhardiest people in the entire world. There's this, it's very interesting, as I become an old gray grognard, to watch very new people who come into the community, right? Like people who are, you know, coming out of college or in college or coming out of high school or whatever, and who get into the competitive community and immediately there's this, and I think everyone's experienced this at some point, right? Where there's this like, you almost feel like this drive to prove yourself, right? And so you have to beat all the people who've been playing for longer than you. And sometimes that manifests as people being very, very tryhard when they are relatively young. And if you can, especially if you're playing against like your teacher and you can beat him in a game of toy soldiers, you're like, oh, fuck that guy. He's teaching me calculus, but oh boy, am I better at gaming than him. And it's so interesting because it's like, I don't know if I have the energy to care that much anymore. I'll just complain that my army's bad when I lose. They do get excited. They do get very excited. But like in a lot of cases, there's some situations where you have someone who's coming in, and I'm not going to say it's all of these cases, but you have someone who's coming in who's on the younger side. And you have these cases where it's like, oh, I played a guy and he was a dickhead, or I played a guy and I thought he was cheating or whatever. And a lot of times it's like, one party is like 20 something years old and is trying like very, very hard to get the W's or whatever. It's just an observation. I think that's just part of the human experience. I don't think that's, I'm not going to shout out younger players. I shouldn't say like that young, but younger players for being a bad egg or whatever. I think that's just human nature to some extent. Why did I get a B plus instead of an A? Because you moved an extra inch in our game of 40k. Oh man. Nurgleman, 4 of your opponents over the weekend were college kiddos. You played 4 games of 40k over the weekend? Bro. I'm jelly, dude. God damn. Did you play ATC, Nurgleman? That's pretty fun. So anyway, let's talk about this interesting this interesting section here, because I think that it's interesting. I played the worst game was against a student of mine. I heard the guy had a reputation at the club for forgetting rules or playing extremely loose, so I went in a little worried. I mentioned to him that, so let's be careful. It is a interesting vibe to go into a game with. You're like, yeah, I told my opponent I heard that he was a dipshit. First thing he does, scout his GSE bikes 11 inches out of the center objective. You can imagine the move, right? He's like, I have moved 9, pulls out like 12 inches to move it, puts the tape measure somewhere on the thing and goes, I'll scout. And it puts them in the middle. I have absolutely seen that interaction happen 100 times before. Oh, I have a scout move. Whoa! Push the whole unit. Wait, why are you in the center of the battlefield? You only scout 9 inches and you deployed 12 inches away from it. Why are you touching it? He was told previously that bikes require visibility for their mortal wound ability to drive-by demolitions. And I could see him lining them up on the same turn for a unit he can't see, so I had to bring it up to him again. He was deep striking too close, moving an extra inch or two constantly, miscounting dice or messing up rolls constantly. Round 3, I told him I'm done and this isn't fun. I gotta watch every little thing he does because 50% of the time it's wrong. Wasn't a super new player either. Another game was much simpler. A Grey Knight player who didn't measure a single 9-inch deep strike. Correct. The entire game. Every single one was 7 to 8 inches. When that's your army's whole gimmick, it's important to do correctly. So fucking true. That is brutal. When you're just like, oh, it looks like there's a space. I'll deep strike over there. And you just plop the models down and your opponent's like, no, bro. I fucking screened this. I have my widget and you don't fit. Get out of here. One of my favorite phrases whenever I'm playing deep strike armies, and in some cases it's just in general for 40k, is like, first of all, is there a solution to this geometry problem? And B, is this like this in some cases is an unsolvable geometry problem? And sometimes it's a case where it's like, if I contort my model in such a way and position my other deep strikers in such a way, I can fit this unit 9.5 inches away from you instead of 10.1, right? However, in some cases, if you measure everything out correctly, there is simply no geometry where that works. And I think you just have to accept that. If you're playing uppy, downy, deep strike armies, I know it looks like you have space, but if the space doesn't exist on the table, you have to accept that and you have to move on. If the geometry problem cannot be solved, just go find a different geometry problem. I know you want a deep strike in the back line, but I put models there so you couldn't. Don't just plop your guys down and hope your opponent doesn't double check you on it. That is cheating. What I think is interesting about this is, like, what is the dynamic there when you go back to class, dude? Like, I can't imagine that. Like, I just played against a student of mine who I am professionally required to judge, right? And I just played a game with him where In this person's recounting, they cheated a bunch. That's wild, dude. Oops, I accidentally closed it. Like that's gotta be fucking awkward, bro. Right? Ooh. That just you get like the third hand, like the third party embarrassment. You know, if like those two people are walking into a classroom together afterwards and that dude has to sit in front of the teacher that told him that playing him in fun games wasn't fun and they weren't going to do it. That's fucking brutal. Check all his stuff for ChatGPT. Yeah. I mean, yikes, bro. But also, that's also like, if you're the student, right? I mean, sometimes like you're in university, you're 18 or 19 and you're like, I got to get these dubs in the game, into the Toy Soldier game. But like you're playing against someone who is responsible in some part for your future and you cheat against them. And it's like, first of all, don't fucking cheat at 40K. That's stupid. What are you doing? Get a life. But also, if there was a time not to do that, it would be when you play against the guy who grades your term papers. Like, what is happening? It's like the people who dice cheat on stream or whatever, right? And it's like, what did you expect to get from this? What? Did you expect no one would catch it, right? There's 500 people watching right now, and there's going to be 3,000 more tomorrow, and you're gambling a game of toy soldiers on the fact that no one will catch you? Why? You're gambling the fact that, like, your professor won't catch you cheating in a game so you can win a game of 40K against them? What the fuck, dude? Whereas I bet this story has a much different ending if that guy shows up and it's the most, and he just makes the game super fun for this guy, right? I don't know. It's kind of weird for like a semi-professional situation to arise like that from a game of Warhammer 40K, but it's not unheard of. If you show up to 40K and you're just like a douchebag all the time, nobody wants to interact with you at all. But if people want to hang out with you because you're cool at 40K, that it's just socialization, right? Has the potential to open up other opportunities for you. Just flabbergasting, dude. Absolutely crazy. Check ChatGPT? No. He means check the guy's work for using ChatGPT is what the chat was talking about. If you're a teacher and you play against somebody, you play against your student and your student cheats at 40K, does that indicate the fact that they may cheat in other endeavors as well? Just a weird and interesting situation. A couple years ago, I played a major in my area. I got paired against a notorious problem player round one. In the past, this guy had been an awful opponent to my friends, constant micro-cheating with movement, conveniently always getting his rules wrong in his favor. I played him twice, and he had told me one of his units moved 12 inches. I found after the second game that they only moved 10 inches. Knowing his past history with my friends, I decided to tell him I'd rather forfeit a game to him 0 to 100 than play, because he is a shit opponent to deal with for 3 hours. He was quite shocked and asked multiple times if I would play. I put her the scores straight away and wished him luck. Same dude comped a ban from local events late last year, so sadly he has never learned his lesson. Well, sounds like he has now. I don't know. I always dislike this. I mean, I get it, right? I think that there shouldn't be a requirement. It's a mantra of mine that Warhammer 40K is like it's like a two-party activity. Both parties have to be engaged in it, like many other activities. Both parties must be consistently delivering vigorous consent in order for the game of 40K to happen, appropriately. There should never be a case where you feel that you must be obligated to play. If you don't want to play, if you're on stream or you don't want to play, If, you're not feeling good or you don't want to play because you don't like the person, you should not be required to play, right? We are not playing for anything. Very few people are professionally playing in this game, and those people would not forfeit anyway because they have an active stake in playing the game out. This feels, however, if you're someone who constantly micro cheats with their movement, gets the rules wrong in their favor, blah, 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 what they are trying to do is get wins so they feel good about themselves, right? Like the goal for them is for them to get easy W's on people. If you give them an automatic W, they might, throw a little tantrum that you won't play the game, and they're like, "Oh, are you sure, dude? Oh my God, are you sure?" But that is, if at the end of the day, what they're there for. They would love nothing more than to get 5-0-100 wins and showcase to everyone how they are the best Warhamster 40K-er of all time. So it does make me a little sad when people do kind of like feed the beast by forfeiting to them and sort of reward bad behavior. Whereas making them like work for this kind of stuff, I think does dull the game for them, right? If like, even if they still beat you or whatever, but you catch them on 100 different rules things and get to call the judge a bunch of times, of course, that's going to have, in my opinion, a more positive outcome for the rest of the community than just giving them a forfeit for 100-0. So it does make me sad. I do understand why Schmut here would not want to play that guy, and I don't think that Schmut should be required to play against the guy that he doesn't want to play against. I think it's very reasonable. But I do wish that more people, if someone has a bad reputation in their area, would stand their ground and just like sort of tell them to get fucked, right? I think that behavior would be curbed a lot more if you stand there and be like, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. And you do play the game to the letter of the law to really show people like, the baseline of, what's the word? Like the baseline they should be playing to, right? So I don't know. It is what it is. Cheated a few times without realizing it, or just lazy to double check something. Yeah. And like, to be clear, cheating as a term does have like a connotation that it is intentional, right? To cheat, there must be an intent behind the action. Versus misplaying, I think is what you would call it. If you were like, oh, fuck, I didn't realize this guy was AP1 instead of AP2 because I got his chainsword mistaken for a different chainsword, right? Or whatever. And, to some extent, like events and judges and stuff have to kind of like, treat those two things as being the same, but as a community, we can understand that sometimes you do misplay things and sometimes you do cheat. Of course, there's a pattern of behavior that does evidence cheating, and it sounds like in this case that was what was going on. But like forgetting a rule sometimes is certainly not cheating. It's misplaying, and you should feel bad about it and make recompense where you can, for sure. We had the player attempt to allocate no precision wounds to an opponent's character because the character is wounded, corrected him as a TO, found out they kept doing it later. Right. So that's it. As soon as a player is corrected on rules interaction and continues to play it in their favor, that's cheating, right? That's where we've crossed the bridge from unintentional misplaying to intentional. And that's, I think, immediately, in my opinion, just fucking get those people out. I don't give a shit. You can't play here anymore, dude. Get out of here. Apocryphally, we had a player who was like a problem player for a lot of stuff like that in previous years, back in the community that I used to play in all the time. And he had a very, very stark reputation for misplaying things. And he had been banned from a couple stores as a result. And I think he had like tried to sort of get his act together, but he still ended up having all these sportsmanship issues. There were so many problems, and a new store opened and just sent him an email that said, "You are not welcome in our store." And I thought that was so fucking funny. He was like, "I didn't even want to go to your store, and they banned me before like on the opening day." And I was like, "Yeah, dude, don't be a fucking asshole, and that won't happen." It seems so simple. I don't understand it. It's wild, dude. Yeah. Have a question about dice rolling etiquette in real life. Seen videos where some people do this odd pouring dice to a tray into a tray instead of rolling. Is it normal? It looks odd. No, it should be fine. With the number of dice in Warhammer 40,000, if the dice are contacting another object, if they take like 5 dice and they take it and they like put them down, that is problematic. But if you're rolling 20 dice and you take the dice and then you pour them back in, there's no way that is not a random distribution, right? It might be less randomized than something else, but there's no way for a person to be able to like, do anything with that. Basically, as long as dice are bouncing off something, the amount of randomness in the physics of how they work is enough to consider them randomized. So if you have a billion dice and they're sliding into a thing and they're all jumbling together, that should do it. Ideally, you'll have the dice bounce against a surface and then come back, because that spins them and that gives them like a truly random sort of pattern. However, this is Warhammer 40,000. We roll a truly unnecessary number of dice in some cases, and the physics of doing that is too much. If you're picking up the dice and fucking moving them around and doing a bunch of shit with them, they'll be random. It's fine. I did watch a game one time and I thought it was for X-Wing of all things, and it was like a battle report. I don't even think it was a competitive game. It might have been. I can't remember though. But I remember that at the play, this dude on a video would take his dice. X-Wing plays very, very low dice counts. I think the most dice you'd ever roll in a game of X-Wing was 6 at a time. And he used D8s. And this dude would take his dice in his hand and he would fuck around with them. And then he would go, okay, I'll roll. And he just went like this, straight down. And the chat was like, what the fuck is that? Roll like a human. That was the only time I've seen something that I could maybe consider to be some sort of dice trick in a tabletop game. Beyond using like just straight up weighted dice, of course, that is a thing that does happen. Unfortunately, I have very well performing videos that have discussed that in the past. But that was the one thing I was like, if I see somebody doing that in a game, I'm like, what are you doing there, bud? Just fucking roll the dice like a normal person. But if they're just like doing this with the dice, it's whatever. Doesn't make a difference. Worst dice rolling you played against was putting a 6 top up and then drop it straight down with 2 fingers 1 inch from the dice tray. What? That's fucking insane, dude. That's the same thing, right? It's like you take the die and you put you're like, all right, here's the 6. And you put the 6 like this and you go, what? And there's like a good 30% chance it lands on a 6. Fucking incredible. That's insane. I got accused of not randomizing one time. Or I think it's a funny story. I love to tell it, but like I think there's a couple things in a game happened where my opponent, I don't think necessarily understood the matchup and how I was playing Chaos Demons in 10th edition and how survivable Chaos Demons were, right? Especially Ed. It was like pre-nerf Ed, who was a 4+ invuln save, or 4+ invuln, 4+ fatal pain. And I was like, with a command reroll in the chamber, I'm like, I take checks notes like fucking 8 damage from basically anything in your army, so I'll just go in the middle and it's fine. And he charged it with Canis Rex. He's like, Canis Rex kills anything in the game. He has 5+ critical at a floating reroll and 8 damage a swing. And then he rolls and he gets like, 6 hits, 4 wounds. I'm like, all right. And I roll the dice. I think I take like 8 damage from Canis, which is about average. And then the next turn, we both survive, and Canis swings again, and he's like 5 wounds, and I've saved them all. And my opponent straight up was just like, can you not use your dice anymore and use mine? And I was like, yeah, man, I don't give a shit. But he basically just low-key accused me of cheating on my dice. And I was like, I understand. I was dicing him pretty hard. Like there were a couple of interactions that went very, very well in my favor. But I was like, yeah, dude, I don't give a shit. A D6 is a D6 is a D6. I will roll any D6 you want me to roll if we're playing a game. If you have a set of D6 that are perfectly balanced and you prefer I roll them, I do not give a crap. As long as it doesn't interfere with like my logistical capability to do anything, that's totally fine. But rolling a dice is no different than rolling any other dice. And if you run into somebody who feels that way, that is a person you should worry about. If your opponent is like, no, I will only ever roll my special dice. So you're like, all right, man. Come on, dude. What are we doing here? Can we have a moment to be mad at people who use their swapped dice roll at events? I don't know what that means, chat. Yeah, they don't see the games you fill 18 saves in a row. That's so true. Like, I always tell people, I had one game I played. It was on stream. It was a really funny game. I think I won, which was wild. But I rapid ingressed a Bloodthirster, and I looked, and I was like, you can see me with one Piranha. And my opponent was like, yep. And then it was Kauyon, I think, like early 10th edition Kauyon. And the Piranha goes and shoots, rolls 2 6s to hit on 2 Seeker missiles. Sustain hits 2 the Seeker missiles. Gets, I think, like 4 through. I fail all the saves, and he's like 6, 6, 6, 5 for damage, and just one shots the Bloodthirster. And I was like, well, that's interesting. That probably shouldn't have happened. And then every time people are like, I can't believe your 4+s have rolled so many 4+s. And I was like, I mean, they don't always, bro. You know, it just is what it is. It's 40K, and you can complain about it at the time, but you do have to understand that it, to some extent, there is a, you know, you win some, you lose some. The dice giveth and the dice taketh away, which is always very funny. Had a Necron player make 25 consecutive 4+ invulns. Immediately says, I'm going to swap these out and grab new dice. I've been on that too. I actually realized I played one turn of a game. I was very excited. I have a Thousand Suns army. Unfortunately, it's only partially painted, but I'm very proud of it because it's all Egyptian themed. So I did sandstone, and I did turquoise and gold. It looks, you know, burgundy. It looks very Egyptian. I was like, this scheme fucking rocks. It's what my Magnus is from, who's hanging out over there right now. You can't even see him on the camera. So there you go. He's kind of in the corner. Oh, there he is. You can kind of see him. He's very small. And I got sandstone speckled dice from Chessex that look like they're rock, and I was like, this is sick. They're gonna go so well with my sandstone Egyptian army. And I rolled them, and I said, wow, that's a lot of 5s that I've rolled. And then what I realized was that the speckling had a defect where probably at the point of injection, when the injection molded the dice, sometimes the little speckles would congregate into a big speckle, and many times that big speckle would be situated either between the 4 points of the 4 or between the 2 points of the 2, which would make it 5s and 3s, of course. And I said, nope, I just threw them out. I was like, no one should fucking ever play with these. These are just cheat dice. It was like obviously not intended to be that way, but I was like, wow, this is maybe the worst dice I've ever seen. And I immediately put them in the garbage, and I went to the front desk and I bought new dice. That was like way one of the worst situations I've ever seen about that before. That was crazy. Anyway, great dice stories, chat. What a good time. Let's talk about some more of these situations, I think, while we're here. Many years ago, as a sophomore in high school. I love that there's a lot of school stories in this thread for whatever reason. So friends and I played in a Rogue Trader tournament. I got paired against a good friend of mine. The battle went decently well. I played well. I had him on the ropes with my army, ready to charge in for the kill. I was anxious going through the charge phase, and I said, now melee. He's in high school, by the way. But instantly backtracked from the error since I had completed 1 out of 5 charges. My buddy said, no takesy backsies, which galled me because I had given him plenty of takebacks over the years. I protested, but the judge and or organizer backed him. I lost the game. In truth, there were some solid players at the tournament. I would not have gone far, but it really stings that a supposed friend pulled that kind of crap. Yeah, that's wild. And I think initially also here, this is a very good, very good quote. Phase chases aren't like declaring bankruptcy in the office. I almost want to get that framed. That is an extremely harsh ruling from the organizer. And of course, like if it's like a situation, you know, obviously there's maybe a little bit of bias of from the person who's telling the story. If it's a situation where you go, okay, melee, these guys are going to attack, and you roll all their attacks, and you go, oh fuck, I haven't charged the rest of the units. Most opponents would be like, yeah, that's fine. Of course, this guy's like a tryhard, so he doesn't want to do that. However, I do think that you would be hard pressed these days to find a judge who would back you on that. if you go melee, oh no, wait, I have one more charge, and your opponent goes, nope, you said it's the fight phase, and you call a judge, I cannot imagine a judge nowadays would rule that. However, I can imagine that there are games in which that is a, legally binding phrase, right? If you're playing Magic the Gathering and you say, okay, main phase done, go to combat, and then you like sit down, you go, oh wait, no, I'm going to cast a sorcery. Depending on the rules enforcement level, a lot of judges would say that's binding. You have moved to the next phase. You are done. 40K, fortunately for us, thank God, does not work that way. It would be very annoying if it did. But I don't, it's not that I don't understand why someone would make that ruling, but I don't think you would be able to do that nowadays, which is pretty wild. Anyone who does that once the door opens the door, never being allowed to take back anything ever again. Yeah, immediately. If you do that in a tournament, especially if it's like, I played against a friend of mine, right? We like go to dinner after the tournament or whatever, and you're gonna be like, no, dude, if we play ever again, it's fucking on. I don't know if that's the energy you want to bring to that situation, dude. I do understand though, like there is this like veneer if you're like good at the game. People consider that you're going to be good at the game, where like now every game has to be this knife fight, because if they ever beat you, they're, oh, I beat the really good player, now I'm really good, or whatever. So there's this like extra sort of cachet that comes alongside it. So I understand where you would come from if you're like, oh no, my guy who I thought was bad is going to beat me maybe. So I should get him on a technicality, It is what it is. Pretty wild. I was playing 1,000 Suns of local RTT against the Chaos Spaceman army. He had no issue whenever I had the rules that countered me, but whenever I could counter him, he'd huff and puff. I mean, that's just based. I decided an all-in on Scarab called Terminators. I was baffled he couldn't wipe them in one phase, which I warned him about. You're like, bro, these are -1 to wound permanently. They're like -1 to wound and -1 AP against 1 damage weapons. What are you talking about? Since 1,000 Suns can be complicated, I tend to say out loud what I'm doing, so people don't think I'm cheating or making stuff up. In the middle of one of my phases, he goes, "Stop saying what you're doing and stop explaining your army." What? That's how you play the game, bro. What gets me is when people explain my army out loud. That does get annoying to me. When they're like, I'm like moving and they're like, all right, you're moving 6 inches and then you're going to come over here and you're going to shoot that guy. And you're like, I bet you don't know what I'm going to do. Get out of here. I don't even know what I'm going to do. Stop it. But if you're like, I'm going to move 6 inches to be inside this trade feature, and the other guy goes, stop stalking. And you're like, what? That's so fucking funny. We often talk about Warhammer 40K as like an open communication game where active and ongoing communication with your opponent is the root of how the game plays. But not according to this guy. Apparently this guy wants Warhammer 40K to be dead silent. No discussion at all. That's so fucking funny. This guy in our area that's famous for telling opponents not to explain their army shtick and then losing to them. Yeah. That's like the famous last words is like, I know what your army does. As soon as you're like, no need to explain, I know it. And your opponent is like, oh, all right. And then just like does the thing and you're like, what? I didn't know you could do that. You're like, brother, I offered to talk you through it and you said you knew. What are we talking about right now? Incredible, chat. It's possible to win by information overload. Yeah, I mean, that is true. But like, also sort of navigating the information overload is like a skill to the game too, right? Like it's about reading the game state. If your opponent's like, watch out, I could Overwatch, and you're like, Rich, you have 6 shots and you don't reroll. Fucking pay a CP if you want to. You'll kill one guy. You know, like that kind of stuff is whatever. Oh, I could reactive move. Okay, you're in a Vectora and you can only go 4 inches. Fucking come at me, bro. You know, so like a part of it's getting around that. I do sort of enjoy. Maybe I'm too enfranchised or something. I don't know, but I do sort of enjoy the give and take of like my opponent giving me like every potential thing he could do, and 90% of the time, be like, yeah, I know, I'm walking into it, fucking trigger it, I don't care. Just very funny. Strong toddler trying to pour his own glass of milk while telling his mom I don't need any help right before he spills the milk energy. The next turn, Ninja chased his opponent, tried a dumb move which I would have warned him against, but I stayed quiet because he asked me to. After it didn't go well, he simply said, I'm over it, and packed up his army to leave. I mean, in fairness, base take. You don't have to play Warhammer 40k if you don't want to. It was only bottom of turn 2. He was actually ahead on points. Yeah, but if you can be ahead on points and bottom of 2 and then like be out of models, though, that's pretty simple. Points are not necessarily an indicator of winning. I've conceded many a game when I'm ahead on points, and people will be like, why did you concede? You were up by 20. I was like, bro, because I played this game, and my opponent's about to score 45. And we can talk through like what he's about to do, and he's going to score a trillion. Last weekend, I was playing a new guy in the circle for the first time. I'm a Nightmare Hunt Chaos Space Marine versus Stormlance. Oh, I'm Nightmare Hunt Chaos Space Marines versus Stormlance Blood Angels. He's very good into newbies. That's what? He's very good into newbies. Is there a player who's like explicitly not good at playing newbies? Actually, no, I shouldn't say that. I don't know who else experiences this phenomenon, but I'm sure some people do. But like, does anybody ever like feel that they play into their opponent's skill level? Like you like lock in if you play something very good and you can be like on their level. But if you play somebody who's like asking about basic rules and stuff, you're like just doing shit and you're like, these were all the wrong plays. What am I doing? I guess I kind of get it. I would consider myself actually being very bad at playing into newbies. I'd like to think I'm pretty good at playing with newbies, but I also give them a pretty good game because I make a bunch of dumb moves that I would not have made if we were playing sort of a more cutthroat game, which is very interesting. But this certainly indicates this is somebody who wins a lot versus new players, which is not exactly that's not exactly praise right there. That is, in fact, maybe not something that you should be good at. You know, I'm so good at beating up toddlers. Cool, man. Sick. It's fucking wild, dude. Insane. Don't try as hard. I'm like, oh fuck, turn 2. I'm about to lose if I don't fix my mistakes. Yeah, for sure. I have a game. It should be up on my. It's uploaded on my YouTube channel, I think, shortly. But it was a very interesting game. It was against somebody who was, I think, newer to the game, and the game actually ended up being very close. Just because of like that thing where I'm like making a bunch of plays and then halfway through the game I was like, I think half my army's dead. Where'd all my models go? But I think it ended up being kind of a fun game. So that'll be on my second channel probably in the next week or so. He argues that killing my Nurglings in the same activation happens also to my Knight as he is forced to split attacks to both Knight and Nurglings at the same time. He argues that killing the Nurglings first in the same activation, he has to hit the Knight, removes the -1 to hit, and I had to call a judge for him to agree that that's not the case. Fight is simultaneous as if the Nurglings are still alive, since all attacks into both targets happen at the same time. That's actually not the case. And it depends. I believe that the fact that this affects Knights indicates that it is the post-Demon Index release, like the full Index release where they got faction detachments and stuff. The Codex release, which did change how Nurglings worked. And I believe it was the case that previous to that update, Nurglings would drop off if you killed them within the same activation. And I think the current Nurgling datasheets doesn't work that way. I'm going to fact check myself here, chat. So the current one is that till the end of the phase, when you're selected to fight until the end of the phase, each time a model in the unit makes a melee attack, subtract 1 from hit roll. So the current one does work that way, right? When you're selected to fight, you check engagement. If there's a Nurgling there, all your attacks are -1. The previous version said while a Nurgling is within 6 inches of you, if you are non-monster, non-vehicle. Oh, it says excluding a Titanic. I'm going to pretend that it is an armature here. But if it was non-monster, I believe it was non-monster vehicle, suffers -1 while there is a Nurgling within 6 inches of you. In 10th edition, if your ability didn't specify a terminating point and it didn't trigger when you were targeted, the ability only lasted as long as that model was in position, and models were destroyed immediately, were removed from the battlefield as soon as they were destroyed. So destroying a Nurgling with half of your attacks, then moving on and destroying a unit with the rest of your attacks would remove the Nurgling effect. However, it sounds like, because of the fact that they're activating this onto a vehicle, it sounds like this is in the version that is supposed to work for a long time. So if your opponent didn't know that because they played against previous versions of Nurglings and they knew how they worked previously, I actually would not fault them for not knowing that the rule had changed fundamentally. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt here, chat. It used to work the way his opponent said it would. So, I don't know. I think it's fine. Pretty weird piece of triviality to remember about 10th edition, but I did play a lot of Nurglings, so that makes sense. I ask him to always roll on the tray so I can see his rolls at the table in the corner. And I have to go catch him before he picks it up. Rolls saves while I'm counting how many lethals I did. I tell him that I will warn him if I have any gotchas and let him take them back if he forgets. And then I warn him that when he makes a move, I tell him that I will warn him if I have any gotchas and let him take them back if he forgets. And I warn him about something, I guess. Then when I make a move, he reacts and moves inside a transport. I said, hey, mate, I would appreciate a warning. And he says, I told you before. Okay, well, I don't know. It just seems like two people who were probably not communicating very well. They did say that English is not their first language, so that's probably the case, I guess. Got called a cheater by a player who represented his country at WTC, where my Bringers of Flame tore through his invuln-free army with AP5 ignore cover. I first started playing in 9th edition when Drukhari had just released. What a fucking time to start 40k. Oh, what's this fun game with Space Marines? Why is everything Dark Technomancers? Ah! Why is this Flamer guy killing my whole fucking army? Disintegrator cannons are so crazy. First ever game I reached out to a store for a 500-point game as a new player. I matched with someone who had a completely grey Drukhari army who tabled me to the point I didn't kill a single model. Fucking holy shit, dude. In 500 points? Why are people like this, bro? Also, in fairness, kind of shame on the store, right? The store's actively incentivized to give you a good experience because you're going to come back and spend hundreds of dollars if you have a fun time. And they're like, oh yeah, we got a guy. It's fucking Tryhard McGee over here with his unpainted liquefier racks that have +1 to wound permanently. What the fuck? That's wild, dude. If an Alaris is your beacon unit and you split it, what happens? You lose. The beacon fails. The Lions, or Unleash the Lions, specifies that the unit is it leaves the battlefield and is replaced by basically an equal number, or a number of units equal to the number of models, each of them containing one of the models from the previous unit. So basically, like, I have a ruling on this in my FAQ document because this keeps coming up. Basically, like, the umbrella definition of unit disappears and you're replaced by 6 smaller umbrella units. So anything that cares about that unit and not the models explicitly immediately goes away. So if I'm like, I have the Marked for Death primary, I forget what it's called, which is like every time the marked unit leaves the battlefield, do the thing, then that one will trigger. Beacon won't trigger anymore. You like lose all your persistent shit, basically. It's a really weird one. It turns out splitting units is like super bizarre in 40k. And a game designed around units, splitting a unit into multiple little units is really weird. I had a guy who would roll in a floppy cardboard box in his hand and yell out the number of successes without telling me to see. He averaged 75% on his 5+ saves with demons, and his unit composition constantly changed for his summoned units when it came time to charge. Fucking wild. Also, what is this? I had a rules fight earlier where people reminded me why I don't go below the Mason-Dixon line. What? Fucking Art of War copping a hit right there. The entirety of Art of War absolutely snubbed. Get wrecked, you people from Florida. That's wild. I don't know if I would necessarily blame rules misplays on an entire section of the country, like a full half of the country. Anyway, chat. I'm getting hoarse from yelling, so this is that means it's been a good Warhamster Wednesday stream, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up momentarily here. Try not to go try hard at all. Do you try to talk to new players through everything you're doing and helping them react? Yeah, I think that's the way to do it for sure. And yeah, like if they're doing something like super silly, they're like, I'm gonna move these guys up to screen, and you're like, you're 4 inches away from me. I will just charge you, and they'll be like, oh, you should put them behind this wall. They'll be like, oh, I see. I think that helps a lot too, for sure. Is my ruling document posted somewhere online? Yeah, it's in my Discord server. I can just post it in the chat. This is, of course, is not any. It's official for my events, any events that I run, but it's not official for any other circuits. So like, don't think that this is like some sort of WTC thing or whatever. There it is. I've basically been going through and just updating things as they come up. There's a bunch of shit in here. Some stuff like might get changed. I think I've gone through and reworked all of the. I guess I can pull it up on the screen for the people who I actually ended up pulling this up quite a bit. There's some stuff in here that has been brought up a bunch of different times, and I'm sure things will change as we get clarifications or as other event or circuits like weigh in on them. Like in cases where things are very nebulous, I try to rule along with the majority of other event circuits. So if like WTC drops a ruling on something that I'm not sure about, I might marry my FAQ with what they have to say. If it's nebulous, if they do the thing they sometimes do where they just like ignore rules as written, then I don't care. But like a good example is like the Epic Heroes thing, or where like there's a rule that says Epic Heroes can't have enhancements. Everywhere I have seen ruled or spoken to events have ruled that carries over to the Epic Heroes entire unit. So that's where we're going, even though the actual rules as written is very nebulous. Any other chat about TOs? Are we back at that? That's like the most controversial ruling of all time. To my knowledge, and I haven't looked at their rulings in a sec, I don't believe WTC has changed what they're saying. ATC rolled it that way, and as far as I know, ATC had direct interface with the GW Open judges. So it is my understanding that the direct intention of the rules designers is that Epic Hero units as an umbrella are not meant to have enhancements. So I would not expect that to change until we see a July FAQ, which I think we should expect to see coming up in the next couple weeks or so. And in which case they may clarify what the rules are meant to do. Yeah. I mean, if there's any stuff in here that you feel like is useful, then I think that's good. Obviously, not everyone agrees on some stuff because they're all over the place right now. But this is as close as I can get it. And if you're playing in my events, this is important to know because these are the rules that we'll be using for the time being. So yeah. Anyway, folks, I am gonna hop off. Woo! What a live stream, chat. Thanks everyone for hanging out with me for Warhamster Wednesday. Our first Warhamster Wednesday in a really long time. We sort of took a hiatus as we were doing all the new edition stuff. I do want to throw a shout out, two shout outs. First of all, I spent 3 days last week building from scratch a new robot for my Discord server. If you're interested in online play, I'm going to drop an announcement later this evening into the Discord about this, but if you're interested in online play, go down to the T5S2 section of my Discord, also exclamation Discord in chat if you want to join, or it's in the video description, I believe. And there is a new channel called Join a Pod. It used to be 5 channels, and you would post in them, and then I was going through it manually creating events from that waitlist. That is now an automated system. You click a button, and it adds you to a waitlist. And it tells you where on the waitlist you are. There is a command to see where you are on the waitlist, but I haven't added the command list into the post yet, which I have to do later because I forgot. And then as I create events, you'll just get automatically pulled from the waitlist onto the event. So that's it. That's how it works now. So if you're interested in online play, it's much easier now, which is fucking sick. But it took me ages to figure it out and to work out all the bugs. We still hit a bug the other day, which is annoying. In addition, as I mentioned before, I am also locked in on live streaming the Iron Weld GT. That's going to be the week after next, or the week after this coming weekend, I guess. It's July 11th and 12th is going to be the event coverage for that. It's a 72-player GT. It's using all the new shit. It's going to be fucking sick, Chad. So I'm hyped. I hope you're hyped. And let's have a great time. Anyway, that's it. That's all for me. Yeah. I'll see you guys later. I'm going to redirect you to an event listing for Iron Weld. I don't have any information up on it yet, but I will populate that as we get closer to the event. We're also going to do some live streaming, I think, at the event, probably for Breachstorm, likely on the preceding Friday. Where that's happening, I don't know. That might be either on the Breachstorm channel, !Breachstorm, or on this channel. I'm not sure yet, but I think we're going to have some local players down. We'll probably get some games in, so we might be doing some Breachstorm content, which would be fun. So anyway, folks, that's it for me. Thanks everyone for watching. Keep it classy, folks, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.